welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're strapping in for a pretty unusual mission.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
We've taken this whole stack of sources that you just wouldn't normally see together. We've got Plutarch, classical history, we've got venture capital philosophy, and then the latest neuroscience on pair bonding.
All to answer one, I think, pretty essential question.
How do you achieve a monopoly in love?
And that's really the core tension we're digging into. Our sources, they all seem to suggest that achieving security, commitment, and even that sustained desire, it often hinges on getting out of that intense competition.
So we're essentially taking Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 philosophy.
Exactly. Creating a unique category instead of just competing in a crowded one and applying that directly to our personal relationships.
So our goal today is to synthesize the drivers of desire, look at some historical masters of influence, people who built real strategic leverage, and then we'll jump into the modern psychological mechanisms that can either, solidify a connection or
completely sabotage it.
Let's start with that theoretical foundation. Why is competition so destructive in the first place?
Well, you have to start with the philosopher René Girard. His theory of mimetic desire heavily influenced thinkers like Thiel. It's really the intellectual engine behind this whole idea.
Right. Thiel says competition is for losers, but Girard kind of explains why everyone is so obsessed with competing to begin with.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Girard's core insight is that desire. It's never really independent. We don't just want an object, a car, a job, a person, because of its own qualities. We want it because we see someone else wanting it first.
That person becomes our model.
Our model, and then almost instantly, our rival.
Inevitably.
Because once you desire the same thing, the focus shifts completely away from the object itself.
And on to beating the other guy.
Right. Our sources call this dynamic a swiftly collapsing binary orbit.
That's a great image.
Think of two satellites trying to orbit the same planet. They just get drawn closer and closer until they collide. It's mutual, total annihilation. And that is the feeling of toxic rivalry, whether it's, in a boardroom or a dating pool.
That collapsing orbit analogy, it just perfectly explains why chasing the same conventional stuff, looks, success, whatever, is so draining. You're just setting yourself up for a head-on collision.
And this competition, it blinds us. Most of us are operating under what Girard's philosophy calls mimetic dogmas.
So like conventional wisdom about what's desirable.
Exactly. Society-approved beliefs about what we should want, and they convince us that if we just try harder or look better or earn more, we'll win.
But if we follow Thiel's advice, the goal isn't to win the competition.
No, the goal is to make the competition irrelevant. You have to escape competitive comparison entirely. The goal in life, just like in business, is to stop trying to be better than others and instead become incomparable to others.
Moving into a category of one, that's the 0 to 1 shift.
And if you can do that, you've discovered what Thiel would call a secret.
A secret?
Yeah. The most valuable secrets, he says, are these non-consensus truths that most people just miss because they're too busy following those mimetic dogmas. Finding that unique value requires some serious contrarian thinking.
Which is why he has that famous interview question, right? What very important truth do very few people agree with you on?
Right. It forces you to define what makes you an outlier. That's a pretty high bar for our deep dive today.
Okay, so let's test this theory. Let's look at some historical masters of influence, people who built really an intimate monopoly over incredibly powerful partners. And we have to start with Cleopatra.
Cleopatra's influence over Caesar and Mark Antony. It wasn't just leverage. The sources call it a strategic monopoly. And Plutarch's accounts are key here. He actually noted that her actual beauty was not in itself remarkable.
So she wasn't winning some kind of conventional beauty contest. She wasn't competing on that level.
Not at all. She was building proprietary value. Her unique offering was her charm, her intellect, her ability to speak multiple languages. She wove political necessity together with personal desire.
She created a value proposition no one else could match.
Exactly. And here's the key insight from the sources. Her sexual access was, quote, symbolic, not consumable.
Okay, let's unpack that. That's a really powerful idea.
It means that intimacy was never just a physical act that could be, replaced by someone else. It was always framed inside a much larger context of power, of ritual, of statecraft.
So by presenting herself as the goddess Isis incarnate,
she ensured that access to her was also access to legitimacy, to divine right. It elevated the relationship far beyond a simple affair into, an act of political necessity.
So the scarcity wasn't just physical, it was structural. You couldn't just have Cleopatra, you had to join her strategic vision.
Which irreplaceable. Her goal was securing her throne, and the relationship was the gate to that structural power.
You see that same kind of long game strategy with Diane de Poitiers. She was King Henry II's companion for 25 years. I mean, that kind of longevity in the French court it's just unheard of. It required intense strategic positioning.
It required incredible self-management. Diane, who lived from 1500 to 1566, was meticulous. She famously took drinkable gold. She thought it would preserve her youth and beauty.
Wait, so the very thing she was doing to maintain her strategic edge, that might have been what actually killed her.
It's a brutal irony, isn't it?
Yeah.
When they exhumed her remains back in 2009, they found extremely high levels of gold in her hair. It suggests the elixir may have caused her death.
It's a literal cautionary tale about the cost of maintaining that monopoly.
It really is.
That connects so directly to that business parallel we found with Joan Rivers. I mean, after she was canceled from late night TV, her monopoly just collapsed.
And she executed a textbook ceiling and pivot. She saw the old rules didn't apply anymore, and she moved to QVC. She found this blue ocean, a non-competitive niche, and she just dominated it, rebuilt immense value.
It's proof that survival demands that kind of contrarian thinking.
And you also have someone like Ninon de Lenclos, who built her influence almost purely on intellectual grounds.
Right, she was a French courtesan, an intellectual, an early feminist who just scorned marriage.
And she was attracting admirers, known as the Oiseau des Tournelles, well into her 70s. At age 79, even. Her power came from her philosophy. She argued that traditional morals just occult the amoral nature of this mechanical inclination.
The raw impulse of desire.
Exactly. She put her independence and her wit above everything else.
Now, before we jump to modern psychology, it feels important to note that while we're focusing on these individual power plays, some societies structured relationships totally differently.
Absolutely. It's a crucial point.
Wow.
We have to acknowledge societies that aim for parity. The Haudenosaunee, for example, created what's described as an incredibly egalitarian society. They had gender roles, sure, but women's political power sometimes even surpassed men's.
And you see examples like Viking and Spartan women who had unusual freedoms owning property, running the household, even initiating divorce.
Yes, and these are important contrasts. But even with that economic and personal freedom, they were still often officially inferior to men in the political sphere, which just underscores how rare and fragile that kind of equality has been. It makes the individual monopoly feel more like a survival mechanism in most contexts.
Okay, so let's make that transition. From historical leverage to modern science. If strategy gets you into the partnership, what psychological mechanisms regulate desire and commitment once you're actually there?
Well, let's start with a really foundational but often misunderstood strategy, playing hard to get. Right? The research, and this is looking at 18 different studies, shows that being too elusive, it just backfires completely. You don't trigger attraction, you trigger abandonment anxiety. You push people away.
So the goal isn't just avoidance, it's more like calibrated intensity.
That's the perfect way to put it. The effective approach is about striking a balance. You have to convey your interest, but at the same time maintain a slight sense of mystery. You provide enough reward to keep hope alive, but you maintain that unique quality.
Now this is where it gets ethically thorny. We have to talk about the dark arts here. Intermittent reinforcement, the hot and cold pattern.
This is a devastating mechanism and a huge warning from our sources. In experiments, if you use continuous reinforcement, always reward, or never reward, behavior is predictable. But if you make it random, unpredictable.
The subject becomes anxiously obsessed.
Like a rat just hitting a lever over and over, hoping for a random pellet. The subject starts neglecting everything else, focusing only on that unpredictable reward. In a relationship, that hot and cold pattern creates a literal behavioral addiction.
And that puts the unpredictable partner in a terrifying position of power. Are our sources presenting this as a strategic tool to use, or just a warning about something to avoid?
They present it as a mechanism that works, and works powerfully, but is ultimately destructive. It puts the unpredictable partner in complete and absolute control, and it forces the other person into this state of emotional withdrawal because they're constantly searching for a pattern, a rule they can follow to get the reward back.
But the randomness is the trap.
The randomness is the trap.
That brings us to the positive side, the ultimate form of monopoly, internal biological commitment.
This is the ultimate 0-to-1 success story. True commitment acts biologically to suppress thoughts of alternatives. We see this in cognitive studies. There was one with committed heterosexual Chinese men, for example, who were shown to be automatically inattentive to attractive women. Their brain just filtered out the alternatives.
So the competitive market essentially just ceases to exist in their mind. And this is linked to something called self-expansion.
It is. Researchers use a self-expansion manipulation. They ask subjects to focus on mutual growth, on shared challenges, on learning new things together, and afterwards they scan their brains.
And what did they find?
Neural activity in the reward processing regions, the anterior cingulate and medial prefrontal cortices, was significantly diminished when they were shown attractive alternatives.
Okay, hold on. Let's pause on those brain regions. For the listener, what do those parts of the brain normally do, and what does diminished activity mean?
Right, good question. So, to put it simply, the medial prefrontal cortex is often involved in assessing rewards and value. The anterior cingulate helps process conflicting or relevant information. When the activity there goes down, it means the brain is literally processing that attractive alternative less as a potential reward.
So focusing on mutual growth, it actually rewires your neural reward system. It makes other people less appealing.
It makes external alternatives less salient. That's the neurobiological monopoly.
That really makes the leap from, cutthroat competition to collaborative stability feel much more real, much less philosophical. So if that's the maintenance phase, how do we actually build the long-term trust that makes all this competition irrelevant?
It takes intentional effort, and it goes beyond just talking. Trust is mostly built by avoiding negative perceptions. You have to be deliberately generous and give each other the benefit of the doubt.
I know this dynamic. If your partner messes up a little, but you immediately frame it as, they don't respect me, it just starts this negative spiral.
Exactly. The partner who's being judged feels constantly criticized, like it's impossible to please you, so they just give up trying.
And clarity interrupts that.
Clarity and generosity.
Yeah.
Practically, it means say what you mean and mean what you say. Communicate your intentions clearly.
Because your partner isn't a mind reader, and if you force them to guess or make assumptions, you're basically inviting suspicion into the relationship.
Absolutely. And this whole idea of intentional commitment is wrapped up in this crucial concept of minding.
Minding. I hear that term a lot, but what does it mean beyond just, being nice?
Minding is a high-level framework. It's a very specific mix of things. Equality, empathy, negotiation, companionship, and deep commitment, all built on continuous mutual self-disclosure. It's about actively paying attention to your partner's inner world. It's the engine that ensures you're both growing together.
Which, as we just saw, is the key to suppressing the appeal of alternatives.
And part of that self-disclosure has to be emotional honesty, which is a lot harder than it sounds.
For sure.
Emotional suppression is consistently linked to lower well-being. And here's a critical finding. Attachment anxiety in one partner can actually spill over and cause emotional suppression in the other partner.
So it's contagious. One person is anxious, so the other starts shutting down their own feelings to try and manage that.
Exactly. The pathology spreads.
Okay, let's close with the ultimate joint decision in a long-term bond. Fertility. The strategy here seems heavily influenced by economics and gender.
You can even see it in the evolutionary context. With katydids, for instance, when food is scarce, males become scarce because their reproductive gift is so valuable, and it reverses the typical roles. The females have to compete fiercely for the males.
Fascinating. So the market dynamic just flips based on resource scarcity. How does that play out with humans today?
Well, fertility is a joint decision, but economic uncertainty hits partners differently. Women's fertility plans are shown to be significantly more cautious about perceived economic uncertainty, whether it's high or even, interestingly, too low than men's plans are.
Why that difference in risk assessment?
A prevailing theory is that it's rooted in the differential cost of motherhood, because the burden of raising children, even today, often falls more heavily on women. The perceived risk of economic uncertainty it hits them harder. It leads to more caution.
Which highlights the need for that strategic clarity inside the relationship. And that brings us right back to basic communication about desire and sex.
It does. For sexual satisfaction, the way we frame our requests matters immensely. Research shows that framing requests as approach goals, focusing on shared positive experiences like, hey, let's explore this together, it could be amazing for us, that's associated with higher desire and satisfaction for both partners.
As opposed to the negative framing.
As opposed to avoidance goals. For example, trying to avoid disappointing your partner or focusing on preventing a negative outcome. That focus on what you might lose, it just leads to lower desire and lower satisfaction for everyone involved. The strategy, at the end of the day, has to be mutual enrichment, not mutual anxiety avoidance. So we started this deep dive in the hyper-competitive world of Girardian rivalry, the cutthroat strategic leverage of Cleopatra, and we ended up in the science of emotional clarity, self-expansion, and these collaborative approach goals.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The journey suggests the greatest reward, that true commitment, that lasting desire. It doesn't come from winning a zero-sum game against rivals or, manipulating your partner with unpredictability. It comes from building a unique shared reality.
And that unique reality, the one built on biological commitment and self-expansion, is what makes alternatives neurologically and practically irrelevant.
The Thelian challenge is to find a unique, non-competitive market. We saw how external forces like economic uncertainty influence big decisions like fertility, often making women more cautious. So consider this. In your own life, what fundamental secret about your shared identity and future beyond money or looks are you and your partner actively building together? What is the thing that truly cannot be copied or replaced by anyone else? That is the ultimate sustainable monopoly of desire.